Albert, what is serious? I think a lot of the people that bought into Scrimbux didn't see it being either going that way, but also being as good of a series as it was. So, can you walk us through the experience for you and how you received it?
Yeah, I mean the one map Atlanta won, like they definitely bodied us on the rush mirror. But then we made adjustments. We decided to favor the Anna Winston comp, right? And I think they didn't really have an answer to when we switched to that comp, and that carried us through the rest of the series. We had a really nice full hold on Gibraltar, and we kind of carried that momentum onto Hanamura to close it out, while they were running kind of more shield centric comps. And I think that kind of I believe the Scrimbux. I don't know who has Scrimbux, who doesn't. But Atlanta were definitely a strong team in scrims, and obviously we haven't scrimmed them in a while. Since generally you do not scrim the team that you're going to play in a match, right? So we haven't scrimmed them in a while, but when we did scrim them, like they were pretty strong in the rush. So it's no surprise that they got the better of us in the rush. I think some of that wasn't even we're not bad at the comp. It was just like for some reason we were just C9ing all over the place. Like I've never seen a 6-man just not touch the point, 3-point cap like on off one like Maywall rotation. Like I've never seen that before. I don't know what happened. Just felt like we short circuited for some reason. So like that map was just like I think we lost that map so fast that it was just like just like oh whatever. Like we don't know what we're doing on that map. Let's just focus on like the next maps. So yeah, I think my thing with Scrimbux has always been you look at playoffs last year, right? There's certain teams that did really well in scrims, if you believe what they're saying. Like we scrimmed Houston, they did really well, right? But they lost to Boston. And on our part, like we were running Sombra, Reaper, Moira, comps into the Hog Zarya comps. Like people were like, oh, why didn't you play Hog Zarya? It's like because we beat that comp in scrim, so we thought
Yes.
like, hey, we have the superior comp, right? And any team that broke that out did that because they thought it was better than the Hog Zarya. But then when it comes match time, I think there's certain comps where it's easier to execute in a match, or there's more X factors. So I think a Hog Zarya has like there's a lot of X factors, right? You got the Ana, a lot of healing, nade, sleep, all X factor like cooldowns. Um, you can nano your Zarya to save like a high charge Zarya and get kills by herself. A Hog, a Hook, Hook is the execute. Ash, one shots, tracer pulse bombs. Like there's so many things that can pick you when you're running, and then as opposed to the Sombra Reaper comp, which is you don't really have any damage alone. You have a lot of damage as a group to burst that, and you need to work as a group to burst it down. So it's a lot harder to play those type of comps. Um, and I think for our that's why like Winston, like Nano Winston's so strong because Nano Winston by itself can win you fights, right? Whereas like when Atlanta's playing, they're they have to get set up right, to walk in, set up their shields. If the shields break, they gotta wait, wait for the cooldowns to come back. So I think there's certain comps that I think stylistically lend itself better to like a match environment when you're like okay, we're maybe we're not working as well as a full team, but we can have those little micro synergies that can really pop off. Like Yaki on Tracer, right? That's a huge X factor at any given time. Like that's why we want Ilios. Like if he didn't hit that pulse, I think we would have lost Ilios on that third point there. It's just like because we have him on that hero, and he's a huge X factor on the hero. He can do that for us, even though our team is losing the fight. He can solo carry that.
Right. Now, I think a lot of people in the community realized that this was a stylistic clash in many ways, as you said. It's also interesting that it seemed like you guys were flexing around in a position where you almost wanted to force Gator onto Winston comms. Is that something that was conscious, just like exploiting the weakness that the player has there?
I don't think so. I think for us it was like, okay, we don't really want to do the mirror. Like it didn't work well on Eichenwald. Like not that we're not never gonna play that. Like we play that a lot in scrims. It's just like, okay, match day, you got to make some adjustments. You got to figure out like what's working, what's not working. Our rush comp wasn't working. So I don't, and Kuki would have more information whether that's like our standard comp. I don't watch enough scrims anymore to know. Like I can't tell you off the top of my head. Like yeah, that's a standard comp for us. Like we always run that. I don't know. But to me, it's like a no-brainer. Like, okay, we're running Anna Winston into their double shield comp, and when the map allows for it. So Gibraltar is like a divey map, right? I think it also the maps dictated a lot of the comps we saw.
Yes.
Like Gibraltar, like nobody's running Rhine on Gibraltar. I mean, I haven't seen it.
Yep.
Maybe there's a crazy team that runs Rhine.
Yep.
But Cloudy's not in the league this year, so I don't think there's anyone running Rhine on that map. So right now it's a lot of win. So like Gator doesn't really have a choice in that matters. Like the map dictated that he has to play Winston. And then Hanamura. I think all the other maps he tried to play Ryan, and we just we got the better. Like what they tried to play Ryan on Ilios, and it didn't work out right at certain points. So I don't think we were trying to force him onto Winston. I think it was just we're playing our game. And they have to adapt to whatever they do to adapt. We have to adjust and figure out the new win conditions when they whip out a new comp against us or that they mirror us.
So one thing that we noticed so far in the games is that the compositional diversity across the league is nuts, right? Like much more than possibly anticipated by fans. What do you count this to, or like, why do you think that is happening? And do you think this will remain this way? Because we talked to Christopher from the Philadelphia Fusion, and he said eventually, like, one comp will crystallize. It will be top dog by May Melee. We're playing like one or two comps based on the maps. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that's a very reasonable take, and I think as it's first week, right? It's first week of matches, first weekend of matches. It's been 7 months, right, since we last played a match. Like everyone's still figuring stuff out. Nobody knows what's best. But I think you see more of like teams playing what's best for them in that given moment. And I think I like that. Like for Dallas, like they have a style, right? They have a very distinct style. I mean, not that they have a choice because they're kind of forced without a hit scan to play that to play into pocket picks more. But I think that's exciting, and I think that's it opens up. I think coaches are slowly realizing like sometimes like there's only a certain number of teams that can be good enough at a meta to play that, and you can actually increase your chances of winning if you play something that's more comfortable. And it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. When you play something that's more comfortable for you, that means the other team probably has if everyone's playing meta, they have less experience against what you're going to run. So they actually have less practice. Like they might be good on the mirror match, but then you throw a curveball at them, you throw multiple looks at them, maybe they forget their win conditions, right? Because it's really hard to adjust. It's like, okay, they're in this comp, what's a win condition? It's a constant like readjustment. And if you're just used to scrimming a certain way, you're scrimming a certain comp, you're kind of in a flow state. But then once oh, they're not a mirror anymore, and then you start losing fights, then you're just like, oh shoot, like we gotta adjust. Like what's going wrong here? We're kind of out of our comfort zone here. We gotta, and it's the onus is on the other team that's playing meta to figure out what to do. Once you kind of turn the tide that way. So and anyways, back to the question. I think it's just first week. As we get closer to the playoffs, comps I think will start getting more standardized. Like, oh, maybe there'll be 2 comps. But I think regardless, I think there'll be like an NA comp and an APAC comp. Although, today we were running a lot of Winston, which is more APAC, more of an APAC flavor. But we'll see. But like last year, it was pretty like NA prefers like the Shield, like the Rhine, the Orisa, the slower comps, and then Korea preferred like Somber Dive for the most part, for the most of the season. So we'll see. And naturally, I think there's going to be 4 different metas, and so each time, I think first week of qualifiers is going to be there's always going to be a ton of comps being played while people figure each other out, suss each other out, see see what comps work, see what comps don't work, and then teams will eventually follow like the top dogs, right? You see Shock doing something, you see like someone at the top of the leaderboard doing something, you're naturally gonna start gravitating towards those comps if you have the personnel.
Do you have a gut feeling which composition might that be that we see in May Melee? Any?
It's too early. There's still 3 weeks left. We still got another match tomorrow. Like I don't know. I mean, I saw the Vancouver match, but maybe they adjust. Maybe they play something else. I think speaking in general terms, I think it's either going to be when you have a Winston on the field, you kind of have to play an Ana. So it's either Winston and a Brig. That's like your core. You can swap in a Zarya, you can swap in a Diva, what have you. But I think that's like your core. That's like one comp. Like that's the core. Brig, Ana, Winston. And then the other one is like a Rhine Diva, Rhine Zarya with Lucio Bab. I think those are kind of the 2 archetypes, I'd say, and then how you can have different heroes based on that. But I think those are like the 2 standard ones, I would say.
All right. Now, we as GGRecon have sort of like started this looking at the integration of OG into the Mayhem. How do you think it's working so far?
We're 100% win rate right now, so it's working great. No, I'm just kidding. I think it's we have our bumps. Like as I said, or maybe I didn't say it, but like whenever I think of like scrims, like there's a lot of teams where it's not a linear progression when you're improving. Sometimes you just get beat up for weeks on end, and then you have like a epiphany moment. You have an aha moment. You're like, oh, okay, now that we've been beat
Yeah.
up so many times, like now, whether it's like season one where like Timon goes to the bathroom, he's like, oh shit, like maybe I should play Winston, right? Like just crazy stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like sometimes you need a switch, like a crazy switch, and it works. So ours is not as crazy, right? Like we only have 7 players. We're not gonna, probably not gonna do anything crazy with given our 7 player roster. But there's always changes. Like people are always figuring things out. Teams figure things out at different paces. And it also depends on who you scrim, right? Like if you scrim certain teams that don't throw you certain looks, uh, you might not realize like, oh, this is how we beat that, right? And I think that's what makes Shock so strong is they have so much. I don't want to say tenure. They don't have tenure, but like they have so much experience, right? Like so many seasons of like, okay, I've seen this look, I've seen that look, I've seen. So they in their head, like when you throw a look at them, like they're not phased. Like when they saw Bastion, like I know Super's like, yeah, they're like Glad's always plays weird shit, but like they didn't look confused at all. Like they're
Yeah.
like, okay, we saw the Hanzo, we spam them down, like no worries. Like they didn't try, they didn't look flustered when the Bastion when there's a Bastion Pharah on the field, right? And I think that's like that's where every team's trying to get to, where you see through repetition, through having things thrown to you in scrims, you learn like exactly what you need to do, and then it's about getting all 6 players on the same page. So every team has its ups and downs. Like as I said, like our Scrimbux weren't like large going into this. Like I wouldn't say like going in, I honestly I could see Atlanta winning. Like I think it was more of like a 50-50
Yeah.
possibility. I don't want to say we had a dominant win, but I think Eichenwalde they punched us in the mouth, we punched them back, and we punched them back on Gibraltar, and then after that, I think it was that was like that's when I felt I was like, okay, I think we have this in the bag.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think I would say it was we're pretty evenly matched going into it. Um, uh, and yeah, I mean, if you just judge from Scrimbux, like we were definitely we definitely performed worse than Atlanta in scrims. I don't know what their win rate was, but I know ours wasn't like
It was
anything to
like
brag about.
85 or something.
Yeah,
Sophie talked about it. Yeah.
ours is not anything to brag about.
Yeah.
We've gone through rough patches, but as I said, like all it takes is like, okay, maybe you do well in the war, maybe you feel good that day, right? And that's all that matters in the end. Like you can be beat up for a whole week on scrims. If you win the match, like nobody cares. And that's happened multiple times. Like season one Boston, like that perfect stage they had, their win rate in scrims was abysmal. Like
Yeah.
I was on that. Mayhem was beating them back then in scrims. Like we boomed them a block, and Mayhem's like second worst team,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
we should not be. We have no business winning against.
Yeah.
You wouldn't think we have any business winning against like a team of that caliber that went perfect, right?
Yeah.
But we did. So it's like to me, Scrimbux. Ever since then, I guess that's kind of like my view of Scrimbux is like I've seen teams rip off crazy match wins, or like win streaks without basically winning a single scrim block. And it's just like nothing matters until all the scrims cease to matter when it's just you and the other team. Like that's all that matters in that moment, and anything can happen, especially with the talent this season. I think this season is super exciting in terms of the talent.
For sure. I think the general level of play is higher than possibly expected even. Now, switching gears a little bit, because I think one thing that everyone in the Overwatch League is also always like sort of like side-eyeing, and I wouldn't say mildly concerned about, but it gets there, is the viewership and the broadcast experience that we're getting. Now,
Yeah.
a lot has been introduced this season. I think with the clips, with the token drops, with the quality improvement of the stream and whatnot. How have you received this? Like, what do you think about the broadcast packaging that the Overwatch League has presented?
I think it's good. I've looked at the graphics. I mean the stream's in what 4K now. Like it wasn't 4K last year,
No,
right?
it wasn't. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks crisp. There's some issues with the APAC like broadcast in NA because I was trying to watch a little last night before I went to sleep, and it wasn't working. But for the NA matches that I've watched, it's been fine. Like it's been beautiful. I like the direction they've taken it. It's more lighthearted. Like we're playing more into like the community, and it's like okay, there's some the community memes and the community jokes, and I think we're incorporating that into the broadcast. And I think that's really like that's who's watching, right? There you don't have these people in like suits. Like I'm not dressed up in suits,
Yeah.
for the game, right? Like it's more casual, it's more banter, and I like that they lean into that a lot. And also the broadcast, like on the technical side, has been better. There's player cams now, like we have to have backdrops, right? Like it's a more uniform, like professional looking experience. but at the same time they're making like the technical aspects are very good, like professional technical aspects are very good, but they're also incorporating jokes, banter, and I think which engages the community better. I don't know what the numbers are. Like I don't know if the opening numbers are better or worse than last year. But I just don't imagine, like as long as we have a decent view, like I would say the viewership right now is decent, and it's fine. But like I don't expect a big uptick until Overwatch 2 releases, right? Like
Sure.
I think anyone that still watches is like a diehard hardcore fan. And to kind of I understand to get the super casual viewers back and interested in Overwatch League, like you need the base game to you need to revitalize like the base game, and that's like I don't think that's coming into Overwatch 2. But everything like I think they've done everything they can to like make this viewership experience like the best possible. For sure.
Well, speaking of leaning into the memes and the production quality of video,
Yeah,
you guys release your own
we
production
did.
right now. Can you talk about a little bit about the process and like how the idea came together?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was there for the whole thing. So it was actually like we didn't have that many people do it. Like it was I was very like surprised at how high quality the piece turned out because we had like one videographer basically that filmed everything. So Ella Pravitz, who's our shout out Ella Pravitz, she's our president of social media over here at Misfits and covers Mayhem everything. But she was the only one here because surprisingly, like visa issues also apply to content creation and videographers. So Emmanuel was stuck in Sweden, so he edited the video, but normally he would be the one also filming it. But this time it was just a one man show. Ella was filming everything. She wrote up the script. She used to. She'll probably correct me on this, but I think she worked for. I forgot what her position was, but she worked for. I don't know if she was a personal assistant or something, but she worked under like for a comedy show when she right out of college. She has a degree in filmmaking. So yeah, so like that's why like it's like a pretty lighthearted piece, like funny but like also well shot. So she did it all herself, set up everything. I just ran around, corralled the players, did the smoke machine, like just did like yes, like the smoke coming out of the gargoyles, like the room, like I was the smoke machine. Swing chip, like I think it was natural just to use swing chip as kind of I don't want to say like flesh her out more because like I think she has like a very exuberant personality, but like just get her in front of the camera because she's always like behind the scenes. She's always the one behind the camera, and I think she has a really good personality like that to like connect with our fans. So I think incorporating her is a great idea. I actually forget who thought of that. But Ella, we used Swing Trip and we just had her kind of since we needed her to translate anyways when we're shooting the players and like hey you need to say this in English, you need to say that in English, so it kind of naturally just evolved into okay like she should just be part of the video, like this would be great, like we can just act as she's like needs to get all the players out of bed, she needs to corral them all, and then let's shoot this thing. So we shot it all in like a day, uh and I think Swing Chip actually buried. So that scene where you see Checkmate like in the sand, she actually had to like she was actually digging up the sand. Like she buried him. Um.
But
So yeah, it was a stressful day. We took a whole day to do that. But I turned out great. Like the scene turned out great. Lots of funny stories from that. Like they actually that ending scene where they're all like they do the gamer pose.
mhm.
We couldn't get them to register the commands in English. But the instant like Kuki was doing like the cadence in Korean, it was just like instant. Like it was like okay, you got to direct this part, Kuki, because we cannot. Like Ella was like Ella just when she was saying like 3, 2, 1, like they would always like be out of sync. But when Kuki he has like that authoritative voice, but it was funny just seeing like our head coach like take over like a content piece. So yeah, like great time. Very impressed. I think we have one of the best content teams in OWL. Like I mean in esports, like with the amount of like for the amount of people, I think we just produced crazy quality work. Yeah, that was all in house. We didn't outsource any of that.
I guess the only last question left then is: will we see more of this season?
We'll see. I think so like all that shot with that was shot months ago. That was in the preseason. Obviously now that we're in season, getting having time like winning games comes first. But there's a few breaks here and there. So we'll see if we can come up with like some skits. But probably probably a healthy diet of swing chips, bits of mayhem until then. I can't guarantee anything, but I'd love to do, some more content, of course. I think it's important for like all our players have personalities, like they're really funny guys, and I think it really, I'd really like more content to kind of showcase that to our fans and have our fans connect with our players and our team here.
Sweet. Thank you for the interview, and good luck tomorrow in your second game.
Yeah, thanks. We'll need it.